We're going to talk about critical chain and the 5 focusing steps. And I've been basically mixing the theory of constraints with other things, in particular lean, all my life. I've keep a count of it. I've done it 243 times now, and still counting. We're running currently 16 simultaneous projects in theory of constraints. Half of them are in production performance or production and supply chain operational excellence, and the other half are in project management, from cars to trains to planes to rockets to hamburgers with McDonald's to luxury handbags to pharmaceuticals. Any possible physical object interests us. We're going to talk about the subject very simply: an introduction, some examples, and a conclusion. How many of you do not apply critical chain? Oh. Good. Well, for those who don't yet, you presumably, when you start a project, you're pessimistic, you know it's going to fail, you know you're going to be late, you know you're going to blow the budget, you know that what's going to come out at the end is going to not quite be something you're proud of, right? That's a project. And if you talk to anybody who's done critical chain, you'll know that in fact it's your fault. It's not because it's a project. It's just the way you run projects. So you'll see the kind of results that I'm presenting here. I'm glad there are lots of non-consultants that can confirm it. I guess one of the problems with critical chain is the results are unbelievable, so they think you're lying. Because, as I say, you can finish all your projects on time quite easily, really. First point, in project management, there are 2 types of constraints simultaneously existing in a portfolio. That's to say that, as was mentioned, each project has its critical chain. That is the constraint of its project. And if you win or lose time on that critical chain of events, you're going to impact the project, right? So each project has its critical chain. And it goes through, when you're running portfolios, resources, right? Different departments. And there you might find, I believe you will always find, a capacity constraint. And it's those capacity constraints I'm going to be talking about today, not the constraint that you find going down the critical chain. Okay? Why I think this is important, it's because indeed critical chain gives extraordinary results quite fast, but it's not instantaneous. Not only does it take time to set up, but to improve, depending on your business, you're talking about something that's about 2 years up to maybe 5 years' time before you're really getting close to, not the finishing line, but getting close to what the critical chain can provide. Okay? So to look at the data you have, how good your planning systems are and stuff, it will take between 1 and 5 months, depending on the size of the organization. And during that time, you're not getting any results, right? And so I'm going to talk about this. You don't have to wait until you turn on critical chain with all its beauty and all its power. There's a lot of things you can do before, immediately, tomorrow, that will move you fast in the right direction. That's what the title is all about. Okay? I realize there are a few talk experts around here, and I know what Elie Goldratt wrote and said about this subject. We do it a lot. Every single one of the implementations of critical chain in a portfolio we have found always have had a significant capacity constraint. Some people say there are projects without capacity constraints. Maybe I've never met them. Okay? So this is my point of view. How do you find the constraint? It's always the same, well, as far as I'm concerned, always the same game. Forget the computer, forget SAP, forget your project management system. All the data is wrong. Okay? Just go through physically the process and look for the queues. Okay? It's the same thing you would do in a factory. And the particularity of a project environment is that the queues can be quite small or invisible. That's to say, it could just be a stack of work on a table, or it could even be invisible. It'll be inside people's computers and stuff. Okay, so if you just keep that in mind, you'll find it normally. The only prerequisite to find that queue is to know it's there, and keep hunting, and you'll find it, and it'll be big. When you found it, you'll know. It's always the same. Yeah. And just to wake you up, because I know it's late in the day and your brains are starting to boil with all that's been presented, I claim, and that's the averages in our company, are that we multiply productivity and throughput in project environments by 2 or 3 very quickly. I call it the 5 focusing steps, but it's not really the 5 focusing steps. It's the high-speed 3 steps. You identify the constraint, you exploit it, you use it better, and because in doing that you can multiply by 2 or 3 the throughput just on that resource immediately, okay, the bottleneck goes elsewhere. So you step straight into 5, it's moved, where is it, and back. Okay, you don't get to subordinate and elevate, you're moving so fast. Okay. Example number 1. World leader in luxury goods, making a lot of money, well known, but I can't give the name. It's in the top 3 largest in the world. This is one of their divisions, and we went in, they wanted to use critical chain. People ask why companies like that want to do critical chain. It's because of the importance of bringing a lot of new products to the market very quickly, right? There are various reasons why people want critical chain in the luxury business. It's just to keep up with the new fashions, the new whatever, and stick close to market demand. So they wanted to move much faster. In we go, walk around, and being quite early on in the process, we come across a person who puts the bill of materials in for all the new products, the bill of materials being the list of things you have to buy to make your product, right? And that person, quiet, diligent, been in the company for a long time, was the sort of person that did not scream and yell, I got too much work, I got too much work. So nobody noticed that she had 5 months of work sitting on her desk, queue time with little through 5 months, out of a 15-month process. Okay, so I got one of my consultants to spend a day with her, and we did a day in the life of, right, watch what they do during the day, and in this case, she actually worked on the bill of materials only 30% of the time, and the rest was what I would call office time, all kinds of waste, getting pestered by management, phone calls, colleagues, and other miscellaneous stuff, right? So they hadn't noticed she was a bottleneck, so they gave her lots of stuff to do. You could photocopy this, you could do this, you could do that, and so forth. Okay, so we just said stop, and the following day we moved about half the stuff she was doing to somebody else, and that increased throughput by 100% in 24 hours. Okay, and then we looked further at what she could delegate and move off to other people, and within a month we got another 70%. Okay, that was the constraint of developing new products, so that already within a month they were doing plus 170%. The queue of work she had 385 projects on her desk when we arrived, and it shot down to 90 within 6 weeks, 5 months, sorry. But you can see it went steeply at the beginning and down to further. For those who work with me, it's usual stuff. You're at 5 months, that's good, let's get to 5 weeks. I'm at 5 weeks, good, let's get to 5 days. I'm at 5 days, gets good, let's get to 5 hours. And they're not yet at 5 hours, so we're still working on it. Why should something wait, right? How can one imagine that a company should stall the process of developing its new products for this kind of activity? It should never become a constraint, and it should flow very fast. Having done that, of course, the bottleneck moved elsewhere. And it moved to yet another silly place, which is the people purchasing all the stuff that was needed, finding new suppliers and stuff. These people, the poor people, have a growth rate well above 80% per year. And so their suppliers are going, oh, and so there was a lot of problems of finding the right suppliers that still had capacity left and stuff like that. And as a result, the work was slowing down. We looked into that, did a number of things, and that increased the productivity there by 60%. And once that had been done, it moved elsewhere. I shouldn't have put woodworking there, because you can start guessing who that might be. So a machine became the bottleneck in the process, and that's where we are right now. And well, we're doubling the capacity of that part of the factory, and we hope to hit ×4 before September, right? Multiplied the throughput by 4. Okay, so that's case number 1. Case number 2, pharmaceuticals, one of the top 6 in the world, making drugs for animals. When they wanted to implement critical chain, we walked around through the factory, and we walked into an open space, and shh, this is where all the thinkers are. Don't disturb them, they're thinking. These are the critical key resources of our company. This is the bottleneck, right? Shh, don't disturb them. We did the analysis, and we found, unfortunately for them, for reasons I could explain, that the bottleneck was downstream at the last stage, industrialization. How and where do I make it? They had 2 factories, but they also externalized 50% of their production to Turkey, Brazil, Vietnam and stuff. And although they'd increased staff from 4 to 9, they just hadn't got the maths right. And once again, by the way, the reason why the stupid bottleneck was there was the guy was quiet, timid, loved his company and was not the complaining type. And he said, yes, we do have a lot of work, and I'm very late at the moment. And so all the blockbuster drugs were waiting for him to industrialize. In that case, we mostly, in fact, hired some more people, and we did some 200% increase in throughput. So it's not the whole group. This is a company, a subsidiary of 500 people. They make gearboxes, big, complicated, expensive gearboxes that, for instance, go between a turbine and a generator in a power station. Right? They're sort of the size of either a large car or a small bus, depending on the subject. And there are absolutely no standards. It's every time it's special. Sometimes they get a batch of 2 and they're all excited, but it's basically every time a design to order. Engineering to order, design to order, and then they make to order. Okay. We went in, implemented critical chain. This is the case where they did know clearly that was their bottleneck. Often people get it wrong, but in this case there was no ambiguity. They knew that. And so the starting point was that they had 90 different projects underway. By the way, when I say a slightly big machine, these are people, right? And I'm an engineer. I love that stuff. It's got to turn for 10 to 25 years without failing and without any wear and tear, right? And sometimes they're not sure if they're proud or ashamed. They make a machine that absolutely has 0 wear and tear. They tear it down 25 years later. It's brand new. Crazy. The whole thing floats on oil, in fact. There's no metal-to-metal contact. Anyway, that's just. I'll shut up. 90 projects in that department of 15 people, taking 50 weeks to design, 1.8 projects coming out of the system every week. Okay, that's the starting point. You go into that office, and I don't know what to say. It's either normal or hell. Both are true. Just panic, phones ringing all the time, people running around, people looking stressed. 30% of the staff had resigned in the past 2 years, burnout, et cetera, et cetera. And if I may say so, we work in all departments in organizations, and today one of the areas which is most under stress is around new product development and stuff like that, for a number of reasons. Anyway, it was just a kind of a madhouse, and we, again, measured what was going on. And typically, these people were switching tasks 60 times a day. You joke, try it, measure your own. Laugh and measure your own. It's easy, isn't it? Even take a 2-hour sample, see how many times they change. That is pretty normal. I can't give you my, 50 or so cases, but 5 to 10 minutes task time in those sorts of environments is just normal life today. Right? So, without going into the details, I hope everybody realizes that it kills, right? That's to say, the time it will take you to get back into these rather complicated designs and drawings and stuff, you're going to lose at least 3 minutes before you remember where you were. And then you stop and you go to something else. And they were making a lot of stupid mistakes because of that environment. And so when the product got to the end to assembly, they said, but yeah, you forgot that in the bill of materials. Oh, yeah, damn. So it was just not efficient, very stressed, and the productivity was ridiculously low. They so happened to have already a program going in their IT department, which was start, finishing, stop, starting. And so I picked that up and said, let's do that. So when we implemented the critical chain, we haven't actually, once again, it took about 2 months to get the fever chart and all that stuff. When we implemented the project, we went into the department and said, we will not launch any more projects into the department, full stop. Okay? They kept the orders coming in. These are orders coming in and designs coming out, right? The orders kept coming in, but we did not put them into the engineering department. That we just kept them, right? And we told them, just finish all the stuff you've got. Okay? So they focused on getting the stuff out, since a lot of the stuff was three-quarters done, half done, whatever. For a little while, they just went up to 8 per week, 400% improvement. Okay? And when we settled down with the system, they were at 4.2. Okay? And that was, as you can see, this was happening end of 2016. Today, the standard is called 6 by 6. They take 6 weeks and are doing 6 a week with the same staff and whatever. Okay? These people were heavily dependent on oil and gas. There were 4 companies in the world doing that sort of product. 2 have died. 1 has been bought. They thought it was good news at the time by GE. And they are on a strong growth path and having fun. Okay? The lead times, that's the number of files and lead time, just going down. You can forget that. That's another product family we started on later. It just went down to 0, right? Very simple. And we haven't yet got to the fever chart and stuff, right? This guy, well over 10 billion. We did a work with them because they're very healthy. We're making a lot of money, growing fast, some by acquisition, some by internal growth. But the entrepreneur that founded and owns the company, he's very ambitious, and he considers the current growth rate is still insufficient, even though it's spectacular. And so he was asking everybody, how can we go even faster? And we had a look through the same gold tree process that Andre and Jeff presented this morning. If you want to be there, what do you need to do? And so we lined up and sorted through their projects. We threw up half of them out because they weren't getting them near to the goal. But even with the stuff that was left, the good stuff, we then looked to see what the capacity constraint was to execute those projects, and it was IT. Right? And the kicker says, watch out, this is often the case when we're looking. We're trying to build tomorrow with yesterday's capabilities. I mean, we know computers and computing and software and hardware is getting to be everywhere. But as a result, I find we're under-equipped to build that future. So there we go, 1,200 people internally and about the same amount externally. And we're just starting that project now. So there are no results. This case here, just to reinforce the point about IT, because it's not just a big company problem. We're finding it's also a small to medium enterprise problem. 250 people only in medical devices. They also decided to use critical chain to manage their improvement projects, various ones. The usual one, like Aerosud, we have to change a version of SAP or whatever, an ERP project, everybody's got one. But they were building new capabilities, installing new production lines, and doing all sorts of other stuff. So 22 of these projects. We did the analysis, where's the bottleneck? And it was 1 person. There were 6 people in the IT department, but it was 1 person who was doing all the work on these projects, right? And when we went to see them, and I'm sorry, it's 30% again. All our results so far, when we do this sort of thing, it's 30% plus or minus 2%. Don't know why. Don't know why we bothered to measure. I could say it before we start. And we went to see the person, and she just had stuff like managing the access badges, so the doors and stuff. Now, that's okay if you just give a badge to somebody when they arrive, but everybody loses their badge, or my badge doesn't work in that door and stuff. So she spent about half her time managing the access badges to the company rather than building the future. Okay? So, again, 80% immediately, and we're hiring a 2nd person. Wow. So that we can build the future twice as fast. Okay? So, to conclude, I find that it's very depressing that the only goal that people have got left in the world of projects is to finish on time and within budget. I find that pathetic. Right? I mean, the level of ambition in project management is just so low these days, it makes me cry. Oh, we finished on time. And we nearly did it within budget. Wow, wow. And does the project work? No. Does this thing you did work? No, it's not really what we wanted. If it's a new product, can the people in the factory build it? No, they've got a lot of trouble. I mean, for those, I do a lot of work in aeronautics, right? And whether it's Airbus or Boeing, they've made these new planes. They might be more efficient in terms of fuel and stuff. But the engineers that designed them were very creative, and there are a lot of parts in there that are very, very difficult to make. I don't know, and they usually subcontract them to people like Aerosuit, in fact, where it's really difficult. Yeah? Anyway, so what I just wanted to say, so for me, critical change should just be a starting point. It creates, it gets rid of the chaos. It enables you no longer to be in firefighting, and to get back to what you should have been doing. That's what you're paid for, right? It's to develop beautiful products and services and make a big success of your projects, not just finish them quickly on time. And you can use whatever idea or thing you want, but I'm always fascinated by the fact that everybody says they're doing lean, but lean, if you take, for instance, the description that comes in The Machine That Changed the World of 1985, just one chapter was about the factory. The chapter just before that was how you design cars, right? And there are good ways and bad ways of designing cars. So for me, once one's got the house in order, that's just the beginning of what should have been the challenge right from the start, which is doing the most beautiful projects in the world possible, right? Just finishing them on time is, well, not enough. Another point I'd like to make is that if we take another one of Ellie's fundamental sentences apart, the goal of a company is to make money now and in the future. I think it's very interesting, as usual, to take every single word to bits, because with Ellie, it's always very powerful. And he says now and in the future. Okay, and to my mind, that means that necessarily, if you're implying the theory of constraints, a company has simultaneously two different constraints in its system, and should have. One, which is making money now, executing the order book, and so we're talking about the short term, the next 6 months or whatever, or maybe the next year. Okay, but then there is the challenge to make money in the future, right? You have to build that future, and that constraint is probably somewhere else, maybe in research and development and stuff like that. So that work, research and development and other things like that, or strategic development, I want to develop myself in Belgium, I want to do this, I want to do that, they're projects, right? So when we're talking about project management, we're also talking about the capacity of a company to build its future as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So I think it's very important. And finally on that point, I think it's also pretty interesting because, to my mind, and other people have been talking about it, managers are project managers. They have a portfolio of initiatives that they have to finish on time, if possible, in good conditions and stuff. So all the rules of critical chain that we apply, that we've been seeing applying, at least 3/4 of them, you can apply them to yourself. That's what we're doing. And Alan, if you look at what Alan's proposing with his app and in his book, it's a lot of the same stuff, right? What are your priorities? Get them stable. Give yourself the right focus on the right thing, whatever. So that multi-dimensional thing called the theory of constraints, it's there in all sorts of places, and it's interesting. Okay. Oh, I'm finishing early. Oh dear. So. If you use, you should. The title says you should be using critical chain. So there are a dozen people here who know what they have to do tomorrow. If you add 5 focusing steps into it, I think you will boost the results even further. Okay, and if you do that cocktail of 5 focusing steps and the critical chain, those are the kind of stupid results you get. And that's what we do every time. In fact, any of my colleagues will be fired if they get less than 100% increase or thrown out the window, and we're on the 27th floor. So just do it. And I'm very glad that I didn't know who else, but that Aerosuit is here, because as far as I'm concerned, they're in the top 1% best users of critical chain in the world. Since I understand they are now at 98% due date delivery, something like that, in project development of new products with difficult clients such as Airbus, Boeing and stuff that change their minds, change their specs and whatever, in the real world. And just in case for those who don't know what a fever chart is, that's the beginning of a project, that's the end, and that's the buffer. So anything you finish below here, you're finishing early, right? And they have a real world problem. They sometimes have fun. They go all over the place. But they've got the system in control after, what, 2.5, 3 years? And it gives that sort of result. Okay. Any questions before I ask? Do have a look at the appendices, because there are lots of sources of information. We've talked about TOCPA, but there's all sorts of stuff there if you want to learn some more. And the books, several people have asked me about the books. That's just 6 of 30 or 40 good books on critical chain. So you do it as you want. Either you call on people like me and I tell you what's in those books at about $1,000 a page, or you buy the books. Well, up to you. I say this to everybody. Some people buy the books, nobody reads them. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a job. As I say, all I do is read the books and tell you what's in them. It's your choice. Any questions?